All right, so what I'm trying to do here is try to put out information, and hopefully, because I'm too much of a small fry and nobody knows, I don't have a channel, or I mean, I technically have a channel, but I don't do YouTube. So hopefully I can get information out there and it'll float around, but not attract too much attention since it's not reaching a wide audience. So in that fashion can circumvent YouTube algorithms, which are getting more complex and sophisticated, as evidenced by a report that, well, a couple of reports, but one that I just recently read from the Johns Hopkins University. That's pretty alarming, and that's why I wanted to do this in the first place, is to go over those, because a lot of people don't know about them and what's out there. And I think we're in a time where people are really desperate for valid information. However, valid information is getting censored like crazy. And so that's kind of my aim here, is to put information out that people who are genuinely looking for real info are having a more and more difficult time finding, because it's not allowed. The truth is literally not allowed. Critical thinking is not allowed. You're not supposed to do it. There was a publication that came out, I think it was Time Magazine, and that was right in the headline, that basically saying that critical thinking is damaging to the populace in this time of COVID-19. So don't think about it, don't ask questions. Not generally good advice. However, the things that I have to go over are going to fall on deaf ears if it's not prefaced with some information that I think when people hear it puts them into a state of cognitive dissonance, where they can't really receive it because it conflicts so strongly with the paradigm that they currently hold to. And so just because that's human nature, is to operate on a premise of confirmation bias, rejecting information that we find distasteful to the worldview that we currently hold, and only accepting information that we already believe in. People have a tendency to reject this sort of thing really on the basis of comfort. They want to stay comfortable. And everyone would say that, I really want to know the truth. And only a small fraction of people are actually telling the truth when they say that statement. Most people want to know the truth unless it puts them to a point of discomfort that they just can't manage. Then they don't want to know the truth. But what has to preface all of these things is an understanding of, a basic understanding of history, really. I think we have to understand that throughout history, governments have been oppressive. That's the path of government, and that's why the United States Constitution was formed in the first place, because they knew that. And so the Constitution is a document devised to deter that from happening. However, we're in a place where that's going away. And so all throughout history, we see this. We see governments becoming increasingly oppressive, even to the point of genocide, over and over and over again. We see it happening now. We see, well, it depends who you listen to. It's underreported, but there's genocide. South Africa, in China, they have death camps. They're putting the Uyghurs in the death camps. That's a real thing. Joe Biden just endorsed that. You'd think that would be something that would be, you don't have to go too far out of the realm of being politically correct to say that death camps are not a good thing, but all right. So we're endorsing death camps now. And a lot of times when people hear these sorts of things, they think that conspiracy theory alarm goes off in their head. And conspiracy theory should be known as a weaponized term. The CIA coined that term when there was skepticism circulating around the findings of the Warren Commission following the Kennedy assassination. People read the Warren Commission's report on that and were like, okay, it doesn't really add up. That's a whole bunny trail that would be worth getting into, but I'm not going to. Time doesn't allow for it right now. So for the sake of brevity, we're going to bypass all that. I can point you in some of the right directions, though, when it comes to things that are called conspiracies. Again, a weaponized term. So now all anyone has to do, if they want to delegitimize really warranted and due skepticism concerning some kind of public event that people are and should criticize and scrutinize and try to come to the bottom of, get to the bottom of it, all they do is say, well, those are conspiracy theorists. And then as soon as you hear conspiracy theorists, you shut off. Critical thinking shuts down. You're like, okay, I don't want to be associated with those people. I'm not going to look at it. However, if you have even a rudimentary knowledge of history, you know that conspiracies are facts. There's been hundreds of them. To point to a few, there's the Tuskegee experiments. That was a thing. Our United States government, in conjunction with a lot of the some major universities in the States here, purposely inflicted the African American community with syphilis to test it and see what the results are of giving people syphilis. And that took place over the course of several years. There have been public apologies issued by Clinton did one, and I think Obama did too. So that's readily acknowledged. Conspiracy theory. Well, it's a conspiracy fact. Operation Northwoods is a real thing. Project Paperclip is a real thing. Those are real. Those things really happen. Again, not going into detail. If you want to know, then look it up. The information's out there. But believing that something of a conspiratorial nature is the realm of fantasy is super naive, and we need to get away from that. And we really need to get away from the idea that in America that sort of thing doesn't happen. Maybe that happened back in the day. Things like Holocausts and Nazi ideology, that was back then. We certainly wouldn't have anything like a concentration camp on American soil. Because we're beyond that. One thing that I think attention should be brought to is Operation Mockingbird, another conspiracy fact. Operation Mockingbird is a CIA operation that there was a congressional hearing about this. So again, something you can look up if you want to verify it. It's not a tinfoil hat thing. There was a congressional hearing sometime in the mid-70s about it. And basically this is the CIA had usurped the media, and that has not changed. They'll say that's been remedied. Well, obviously it hasn't. One thing you can look to, and I think it's probably still circulating on YouTube, there's a really interesting video going around where all these different channels, different stations, different news anchors, all regurgitating the same exact narrative. And it starts with one, and then that head kind of goes up into the corner, and then another one pops up. So the screen splits, and then it quarters, and then it further divides until we have a Brady Bunch scenario. And you got about 100 separate news people saying the same exact thing verbatim, word for word. And it's a long-running script too. It's not just like they said, "Have a nice day," and somebody cut "Have a nice day" to layer over one another. It was a script. It was the whole thing was scripted, and it was about disinformation and how dangerous it is to our democracy. And that was the concluding line. This is dangerous to our democracy, as you see all 100 of them saying that in unison. Yeah, it is. That's dangerous to our democracy. The fact that journalistic integrity is a thing of the past, and we don't have that anymore, and everything that we hear is scripted. So what more evidence do you need that our news media is controlled? I don't know. That's about as telling, I think, as it could be. So Operation Mockingbird, a real thing. We can see it in real time. We see it happening. We know that the media controls narratives. It's really easy to do. It used to do it lying by omission. So like say you wanted to, the United States government has to villainize Filipinos because we need to go over to the Philippines to get some kind of resource that they have. I don't know. All you'd have to do is to garner acceptance from the American public and kind of engender a sense of distrust against Filipinos is to only show instances of Filipino crime. So, Tuesday night there's a special where the Filipino crime spree, this Filipino raped that person, this Filipino robbed a liquor store, this Filipino killed some cops. And all of a sudden people are thinking, what is wrong with these Filipinos? We've got almost an epidemic of Filipino crime here. We need to do something about this. Meanwhile, say you just to put stupid numbers on it, 20 Filipinos over the course of the last week have engaged in these terrible things. Meanwhile, 25 black people engaged in those same things, and that didn't get reported on. 35 white people engaged in those things, and that didn't get reported on. 55 Mexicans engaged in those things, and that didn't get reported on. So we've got this big Filipino problem. The problem really is that that's a small part of the picture and is being used to deceive. But they're not even having to tell a lie to do it. It's just, we're only going to show this portion. And that's enough to control a gullible American public. And that's what they do, and that's what they have done. Now they've resorted to blatantly lying. And they do this, and they've been caught several times. So what is behind it? Okay, so there's demonstrably, factually CIA conspiracies, and even saying that CIA, I think, kind of fosters an idea of the two are almost synonymous, I think, and the same sort of cognitive dissonance, I think, happens in people's heads when they hear that. Well, that sounds like nonsense. Okay, well, go watch it. Go watch the congressional hearing. So for people to say that there is no globalist agenda is really naive, and I think it goes back to that cognitive dissonance where people are uncomfortable, they don't want to go there. And plus, the only people that ever say that are stupid people on YouTube and Facebook, and that's misinformation. I know it's misinformation because Facebook told me it's misinformation, so that's a fact. Snopes told me too. Therefore, it can't be true because people that are responsible for disseminating the truth to everybody have told me that that's not true. Essentially, the CIA told me that the CIA is legit. Therefore, they are, because the CIA wouldn't lie. So if you don't want to listen to stupid bloggers and stuff like that telling you that there really is what could be considered a shadow government, maybe you listen to a Supreme Court Justice, Felix Frankfurter. He said the real rulers in Washington are invisible and exercise power from behind the scenes. That's not good enough. I mean, you think that a Supreme Court Justice might have a little more insight than you would about the nefarious underpinnings of government. That's not good. How about Roosevelt? This was going on a long time ago. This is not a new thing. Roosevelt said that behind the ostensible government sits enthroned an invisible government, owing no allegiance and acknowledging no responsibility to the people. To destroy this invisible government, to befoul the unholy alliance between corrupt business and corrupt politics, is the first task of the statesmanship of the day. That was Roosevelt in his autobiography, penned in 1913. But maybe he's just a little wacky. So we'll listen to the mayor of New York in 1922, John Francis Hylan. He said, the real menace of our republic is the invisible government, which like a giant octopus sprawls its slimy legs over our cities, states, and nation. To depart from mere generalizations, let me say that at the head of this octopus are the Rockefeller Standard Oil interests and a small group of powerful banking houses generally referred to as the international bankers. A little coterie of powerful international bankers virtually run the United States government for their own selfish purposes. Virtually, then probably almost completely now. They practically control both parties, write both political platforms, make cat's paws of party leaders, use the leading men of private organizations, and resort to every device to place in nomination for high public office only such candidates as will be amenable to the dictates of corrupt big business. These international bankers and Rockefeller Standard Oil interests control the majority of the newspapers and magazines in this country. So even then, long before the CIA got caught usurping the what's supposed to be objective journalists, objective news media, hasn't been objective for quite some time. They use the columns of these papers to club into submission or drive out the office public officials who refuse to do the bidding of the powerful corrupt cliques which compose the invisible government. It operates under cover of a self-created screen and seizes our executive officers, legislative bodies, schools, courts, newspapers, and every agency created for the public protection. Again, John Francis Hylan, mayor of New York in 1922, someone who's actively in politics, probably knows something about it. John F. Kennedy, he was assassinated, as we hopefully all know. Here's what the last guy said: people who go against this subversive, shadowy government group end up dead. So let's hear from Kennedy and see if maybe we can put some pieces together why he ended up dead. For we are opposed, this is Kennedy, former President of the United States, April 27, 1961. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. Skeptics have said that was a reference to communism. That doesn't really add up. It also doesn't jive with the previous statements that other people in the know had made. Eisenhower had said, in the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. So these people are globalists. They have globalist agendas. Everything they do has a global purpose behind it, so that when you see social issues arise that have a global premise, climate change, terrorism in many cases, and now COVID-19, just to name a few. First of all, these are largely invisible enemies. Climate change you can't really see happening. Actually, back when these people were speaking, even back into the 70s, the big threat was climate cooling, and it was, we need to do everything we can to slow that down. There's an ice age coming. Well, now it's the opposite. So, according to climate change alarmists, we should be buried in water by now. The polar ice cap should have been melted, and that should have been done about, I think they were saying around the year 2000. There's going to be massive death, and the polar ice caps are alive and well, and we're fine. Now they're saying the world is going to end in 12 years. Just 12 years, we're all going to die because of climate change. Man-made climate change, which they have not really been able to demonstrate. They'll tell you so. They'll say the chlorofluorocarbons that are in our atmosphere have exponentially exploded, and all kinds of things. Crazy things too, like cow flatulence. And this is not a joke. They're really saying this. This was Bill Gates' things. In Germany, you can see farms with cows. They've got these contraptions on their back. They've got these hoses jammed up their buttholes so that they can fart into the fart neutralizing compartment that they carry around on their backs. It's ridiculous. Animals have been farting for millennia, and we're fine. So understand that this is just globalist, ridiculous brainwashing, and they're pushing these sentiments on you without data. They'll say we have scientific data. They don't, though. There are legitimate scientists that compile a data that I would argue is more authentic and say, hey, look at this. This is just a natural fluctuation of climate. We've been up and down for like forever. So we're on a slight warming trend, not even an extreme one. And it's nothing to take everyone's rights away and tax everyone. Now, and that's another important point too. Why is it that with all these global threats, the only solution is raise taxes and remove rights? Because if we don't, everyone's going to die. So with what they're getting into with COVID-19 is a justification for doing those things. And this is authored in detail by the World Economic founder Klaus Schwab, whose book I've read, The Great Reset. Oh, by the way, a conspiracy, they say. The Great Reset, only conspiracy theories talk about that. Please tell me how it's a conspiracy when the book says The Great Reset. This was authored, by the way, 4 months after COVID rolled out in July. So COVID hadn't even been a thing. There are about 174 endnotes. So a very well-researched book. I'll tell you something, I do some writing, and it takes a long time to research. If you've got that many endnotes, it didn't take you a couple months to write that book. You've been working on it for a while. So he was working on this COVID-19 book that he authored long before COVID-19 was, it was a twinkle in someone's eye, but it wasn't rolled out to the public at that time. So no, you didn't write such a well-researched book in 4 months. But anyway, he writes about this. He writes about how they are going to use COVID-19 in order to shut things down, and he marries it directly to climate change. Surprise, surprise. The lockdowns have been really great for our population. We need more of them. We're probably going to continue those, just because even if COVID-19 went away, we need to still do them because they're really good for the environment. We noticed a huge decrease in carbon emissions during the lockdowns, and people reported even smelling the environment was fresher. So he makes these statements that are totally unsubstantiated and ridiculous. Did you notice a smell? Did the air change? It started smelling like cotton candy out there or something? Or what? I don't know. I must have missed that. I didn't notice anything. Here's what we are really going to circulate around, though, and if I can ever get these damn things to upload, because I've been having some trouble with them. So globalist agendas. There's a global threat that requires a global solution. What's a global solution? Globalism, global government, a singular, localized authoritarian government that manages the dictates of the global population. That's what they're shooting for. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's what they mean when they say New World Order. And you read these documents, you'll see that phrase pop up quite a bit. New World Order, Great Reset, and Build Back Better. Their terminology for the Hegelian dialect, which is this. I think it's put more succinctly in here, so I'll just read from this. To define the Hegelian dialectic method simply, the ruling body must first trigger a problem or crisis that causes the citizenry to react with fear and demand a solution. Terrorism, climate change, COVID-19, depopulation. The rulers then offer a solution which they had already predetermined before they had started the crisis, like authoring the Great Reset before COVID was even a thing. The solution would usually entail more power for the elites and less freedom for the citizens. Yeah, so kind of like how we're seeing Amazon triple its profit margins and small businesses all go under. More power for the elite, less for the people. That's the intention. That's the whole rationale behind it. So, you don't believe it? Is it too much for you? Well, then you have no concept of history and how it works. So I feel sorry for you. There's nothing I can do to help you. You'll just have to persist in your stupidity. I said I wasn't going to be mean when I came into this. I can't help it. It's dumb. And the reason that I have hard feelings about it, I guess, is because those sentiments are directed toward people like us who actually can think freely and objectively, do our own research, draw our own conclusions, rather than just listening to the talking heads on our television. And when you come against the narratives that those people believe in, the TV narratives, you're insulting their God, because Danny and Lisa on Channel 9 have always been telling them the truth since the 1950s, and it's not just old people. But they would never lie. We know that that's how we got, that's what held the government accountable. Journalists doing objective reporting. Well, we don't have that anymore. That's not a thing. So to give the magic rectangle in your living room blind allegiance like that is the height of stupidity, and I can't be nice about it no matter how hard I try. We got to get away from that mindset. We really have to get away. Read some books, people. You don't believe it. You don't believe that these people that are in globalist positions are motivated to depopulate. That's what I'm going to share with you. I've got some interesting declassified documents that can speak to that. There are a number of them, so I can't do it here because whenever I have a long video, it doesn't upload. So I'm going to try to cut this off. In hopes that this will load. But if you don't have that foundation, that Your government does not have your best interests in mind. It's lying to you. Your television lies to you. It's not just the news media. It's also educational institutions, especially higher education. And I've seen that firsthand in my own education. It's movies. You cannot even watch anything on Netflix without some kind of social engineering behind it. And a lot of people can't see it because they don't come from that perspective. But all you got to do is point it out to people. And if they want to be awake, they'll wake up to it. It's really hard to miss once you start seeing it. I can't watch the crap anymore. But it's pretty rampant. So, eugenics, I won't get into eugenics. It's a real thing. The motivation to depopulate is a real thing. I know it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe in a shadow government too, but people who are in the know can tell you that that's a thing. A lot of things that are hard to believe are truth, regardless of whether or not you want them to be. So that's my intent. I'm going to put out some more stuff if this loads, but this has to be the backdrop for that. And if you can't comprehend that, then everything else is going to be useless to you because you don't have the ability to receive the information. Therefore, save yourself some time and don't check in on that. So I guess that's all I have for now. I want to turn this off before it gets too long and I have upload issues.